Good evening, my friends. I hope this message finds you in a quiet hour when the world's noise has softened and only the hum of thought remains. Because tonight's story does not march with drums. It moves in silence, the kind that comes before a storm. In recent months, as the sun sank behind the red hills of Antananarivo, the flag of Madagascar fluttered not in triumph, but in warning. No fireworks, no speeches. Only the deep rhythm of military engines echoing through empty streets. And at their head stood a man the world had not yet known, Colonel Michael Randrian. With 4 simple words: "We have taken power." He changed the fate of a nation. This was not conquest. It was exhaustion reborn as resolve. A soldier stepped into the void where corruption had collapsed. And in that void, a new kind of power began to breathe, not of violence, but of conscience. For decades, Madagascar had been a name spoken softly, a distant island left in the margins of Africa's story. But that night, from candlelit homes and broken streets, something eternal stirred. Dignity. And from that silence, dignity began to speak again. This is not a tale of politics. It is the story of a people who refused to stay forgotten. Weeks before the shift, the rebellion began not with explosions, but with darkness. Across the island, blackouts swallowed the nights. Hours without light. Hours without water. Radios dead. Refrigerators silent. Candles worth more than coins. In homes across Antananarivo, mothers whispered to their children, "Don't worry, the light will return." But after years of waiting, those words became hollow. Because when a government cannot give light, it loses the right to lead. The silence grew heavier each day. Students, shopkeepers, drivers. The unseen backbone of the city rose up not for ideology, but for survival. They demanded electricity, and in that demand, they found each other. They were the Gen Z of the Indian Ocean, a generation raised in shadows and screens, armed not with rifles, but with phones, channels, and courage. They turned entertainment into resistance. Flash mobs, candle vigils, marches that looked more like prayers than protests, and their chant haunting and pure. Light for all. The palace saw not hope, but danger. Curfews followed, tear gas drifted. Rubber bullets cracked through the night. Markets burned, streets glowed red from tires aflame. But amidst the chaos, another light flickered inside the barracks. A whisper moved from man to man. Why fire on our own? That whisper carried a name: Randrian, the officer who once refused to shoot civilians. The man punished for his mercy. Now, his story returned like a secret prayer passed from soldier to soldier. Then came the moment that changed everything. Among the ranks, someone finally said aloud what everyone was thinking: "Do not fire." It was not an order. It was a choice. That whisper reached CAPSAT, the elite administrative corps. Men trained not for politics, but for precision. And that night, they chose principle over power. Soon after, a shaky video appeared online. A dimly lit room. A calm man in uniform, Colonel Randrian. Behind him, shadows of those who had chosen conscience over command. His words were quiet, but they cut through the dark. Close the gates. Do not obey orders to fire. No one will care for your family if you die obeying injustice. No flag, no slogan. Just truth, simple, human, undeniable. That 20-second clip spread like wildfire. Across the island, soldiers lowered their guns. Protesters wept, and signs began to appear. "Thank you, soldiers." The fear that once silenced the streets turned into gratitude that filled them. And for the first time in years, Madagascar breathed again. When the convoys finally entered Antananarivo, there was no battle. No roar of warplanes. Only engines and the heartbeat of a nation watching in awe. The soldiers surrounded the palace. And instead of gunfire, there was restraint. Colonel Randrian stepped forward, unarmed, and said softly, "It's over. No blood, no chaos. Just a man standing between the people and the state and choosing the people." When he faced the cameras later and said, "We have taken power," his tone was heavy, almost mournful. It was not a claim, it was a confession. That night, the island did not erupt in noise. It exhaled. Because when power changes through conscience, silence is the only fitting sound. In the days that followed, a transitional council was formed. No parades, no podiums. Just a dim room, a single light bulb, and a promise. Our mission is to restore order, protect the people, and prepare the path toward civilian rule. To many, it sounded like rebirth. To others, déjà vu. Africa had heard such vows before. But for the people of Madagascar, tired, hungry, and brave, hope was enough. Crowds replaced anger with purpose. Streets filled not with stones, but with flags. A quiet rhythm of rebuilding began. Still, the struggle persisted. Power lines remained broken. Inflation rose like heat. Foreign donors froze aid, calling it unconstitutional. Yet the people said, "We may be poor, but at least now we can speak." And in that sentence lay a revolution far greater than any coup. Colonel Randrian rejected the title of president. He called himself caretaker of the republic. He spoke little, appeared rarely. And in a continent of noise, his silence became his weapon. Across Africa, the echo spread. Commentators compared his restraint to that of Ibrahim Traoré, the young soldier from Burkina Faso who once declared that a weapon is not for power, but for protection. From Ouagadougou to Bamako, from Niamey to Antananarivo, a pattern was forming. Not of coups, but of corrections. Not of generals chasing glory, but of men returning nations to themselves. They called it the second wave of sovereignty. The world called it instability. But for millions across Africa, it was something simpler. A homecoming of dignity. Still, history tests even the purest intentions. Months passed. Electricity remained scarce. The economy trembled under sanctions. And the people began to ask the hardest question of all. Can conscience govern? Randrian promised elections within 2 years. He called for rebuilding the grid, restoring hospitals, reopening schools. The path ahead was uncertain, but real progress began to flicker, one light bulb at a time. For the first time in years, the capital glowed again. A single streetlight became a symbol. A child studying under its glow became the new image of revolution. Foreign headlines spoke of democratic setbacks. But in Africa's streets, they spoke of something else, self-respect. In one of his few addresses, Randrian said, "Freedom must be rebuilt in the dark before it can shine again." And across the continent, young people listened not because of his power, but because of his silence. In Western capitals, officials monitored the situation. In Paris, headlines warned of lost influence. But in African cafes and classrooms, people whispered a different truth. They did it without blood. Because restraint, in a world addicted to violence, is its own revolution. And Madagascar had just proven it. Now, as the lights of Antananarivo hum softly once more, the nation stands between promise and peril. The power to shape tomorrow no longer belongs to titles or uniforms. It belongs to the people who refuse to kneel. In the villages, when the power returns for even a few hours, children cheer. Mothers light candles not in fear, but in gratitude. And somewhere in the city, an old soldier watches quietly, knowing that the greatest battles are won not by bullets, but by decency. This is Madagascar's story. A story written in candlelight, carried by courage, and whispered into history by those who believe that even a blackout can become a beginning. From Antananarivo to Ouagadougou, from the quiet defiance of Ibrahim Traoré to the resilience of Randrian, a message now moves through the continent like wind through flame. Africa is not asleep. It is awakening one conscience, one act of integrity, one light at a time. And if you still believe that even the smallest flame can survive the storm, then remember this. Revolutions do not always shout. Sometimes they begin with a whisper and end with a sunrise.